Welcome into the Andrew Garrison Show. My name is Andrew Garrison. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm time traveling a little bit. I'm recording this intro after recording the entire rest of the episode. And, this intro is going to be a little bit longer than most of them are. You can skip it if you want. I'll put the timestamps at the bottom. If you don't care, it's totally okay. I'm going to talk first, just a brief preview of what the episode is, kind of some context on what the future of this show, this podcast looks like, and then some other cool stuff that I want to announce that I think you might be interested in if you plan on watching the show regularly or listening to the show regularly. First of all, this episode, we started with a conversation with Campbell Manahan about the World Cup. It was a great time. I really enjoyed it. About 45 minutes about the World Cup, the USA versus Belgium game. We recorded this in between Egypt beating Australia and whatever happens with Argentina and Cabo Verde as well. That game's finishing up right now. I got to go see how it ends. But in between those, so we don't know what happened with Argentina. We don't know what's happening with Colombia and Ghana tonight. But we know everything else up until this point in the round of 32 of the World Cup. We talked about that. It was a great time. Then I talked about the WNBA, did some title tiers, ranked some championship contenders based on levels of championship contention, talked about all 15 teams in that segment, and then we talked about Auburn football a little bit later on as well, which is a team that I've just been interested in and kind of did some research on and just am fascinated about what this upcoming season could look like. I'm planning to make this show weekly, stretching through, forever, basically, like the until further notice to make this show weekly. It'll be really easy over the summer. I started prioritizing writing more in the spring, where, I'm writing for, even if they're just student media organizations, I'm writing for real organizations, for real people, whereas this is more of a side passion project. So the writing took precedent in the spring. Still planned a podcast, but it just, it didn't quite, with the school and with finals and with softball and with softball games happening 4 days out of the week. It was really difficult to put this show into the schedule, to fit this into the calendar. Now in the summer, it should be really easy because I'm spending way less hours doing something over the summer as I am during the school year, during football season, during basketball season, during, in last year's case, softball season. So this show is going to plan to be weekly. It might be difficult to uphold that in crossover season when football and men's basketball are happening at the same time, but I really want to. I want to make the show weekly. I want to make it kind of a staple in my sports media persona. And that starts right now. And it starts with this conversation about the World Cup and then, the rest of the segments, the rest of the way in this episode. So it's the end of the week right now. It's Friday. I don't have a set day at the moment of when I want to record. We'll see how it shakes out next week. Got to get my work schedule still, for my job over the summer and then and see where I can fit this in. But once a week is a good thing that I think that you can anticipate for sure over the summer. And the absolute unequivocal plan is to make that happen throughout the entire school year. Kind of no matter how busy it gets. If Indiana wins another national championship, might be a little bit tricky, but we'll do the best we can. There's that to discuss. Then also, I want to mention Garrison's Gradient. This is kind of that exciting thing on the side. It's relevant to this show as well. But if you appreciate my writing, or if you're interested in checking out my writing, first of all, see what I write about IU football at the Hoosier Network. See what I write about IU men's basketball at Crimson Cast at the moment, and Assembly Call, hopefully here in the near future as well. And then Garrison's Gradient as well is kind of what I'm doing on the side. There's free subscribers and there's paid subscribers. The free subscribers get what I write for fun. A lot of times NBA, WNBA stuff. At the moment, it's a lot of WNBA stuff, maybe some World Cup, but mostly WNBA. I just love the WNBA. You'll notice I'm talking about it a little bit later on. I talked about it on this show before in the past, especially with the Fever playoff run a year ago, last fall. But I want to talk about I want to write about that a lot, and I plan to, and that stuff's free. It's just for fun. I don't have any insight. I'm not an expert, right? It's just I watch games in my free time. I write about them in my free time. That's where those pieces live. And then the paid subscribers on the same site get my college stuff. So primarily, obviously, college football and college men's basketball, because those are the two sports that I actually cover teams in. Obviously, I'm still very aware of many college sports. At IU specifically, the Little 500 is something I'm interested in writing about later in the year as well. No promises on that. What I can guarantee is one weekly column on college football or men's basketball on that, on Garrison's Gradient for the paid subscribers. And then also I made a rankings algorithm. I'm really proud of it. I'm excited to actually run it during the football season, and we'll have kind of the rankings and also the playoff bracket and sort of some analysis and interactions with those rankings every week over the course of the season as well. Probably on Mondays, maybe Tuesdays early in the year when there's games on Monday nights in the college football. But that'll come out as well. And then in addition to that, and part of the reason why I'm even bringing this up on this podcast is there's a chat function on Substack, and the paid subscribers can access it on Garrison's Gradient and submit questions for this show, this podcast, which will be read on the show and interacted with and answered and engaged with, which I think could be a good way to really establish some engagement with this podcast. So there's nobody that's submitted a question yet. If you do join, like sort of the paid tier on Garrison's Gradient now, you'll probably get your question read immediately because there's 0 paid subscribers. There's no one to compete with. If that place grows, if that Substack grows, then potentially there's a world where, I can't necessarily answer every single question on the show, but I can guarantee that no matter what, all of them will be read and considered over the course of time. And maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe nobody cares. Maybe nobody, subscribes at all. Have a few subscribers on the free side, mostly all people I know at the moment. Just launched it a couple days ago. So maybe no one cares, and it never happens and it never comes to fruition, but I think it's worth a shot. And so there's that. So there's that aspect of the podcast too. That's kind of how the two are tied together in some way. And a lot of the things, for example, I wrote about Auburn a few days ago, and now I'm talking about them in the podcast. So there's going to be some overlap, but usually the writing is much deeper. And that's what is going on over there. So obviously no questions to be read on this show, but maybe next week there will be. Maybe the week after that. We'll have to see. I'll get out of your way, though. I've been talking for over 6 minutes. We should get to Campbell Manahan and the World Cup. We'll hit a jump cut and get to that first segment of the Andrew Garrison Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, welcome back. It's the Andrew Garrison Show. I'm not alone. I'm here with Campbell Manahan. We're going to talk about the World Cup and have a great time. Campbell, I'll let you introduce yourself, but here's the truth right here. The World Cup is awesome. Everybody knows that. It's been great, and I haven't been paying enough attention to be able to sit on this show alone and speak about it. I don't think I'm educated enough to have opinions. I'll say it that way. But I think you are, and that's why you're here, because you definitely have been watching the World Cup and definitely have been paying attention a little bit more than me and probably a decent amount of people. So yeah, go ahead and tell the people who you are, what you do, what you know about the World Cup, because if you haven't watched every game, you're certainly very, very close.
Yeah, I am pretty close. I'm a rising sophomore at IU, sports media major, just like you. But this World Cup just has grabbed me fully. Like, I am fully invested. Maybe it was just the fact that it's here. That might be why I've been more invested in this one. Also, the expansion, that might have roped me in a little bit more. We got more teams, so more possibilities can happen. And so far, the expansion's been a major success. That's been a big note I've had in this tournament. And the round of because it's been a success because the round of 32 has so far been awesome. Final day of it being today, with literally as we speak, I believe Argentina is currently probably kicking off with Cabo Verde. But the World Cup's been awesome. Also, I think my soccer knowledge is mainly Team USA and then whatever I watch in the World Cup. So Gotcha. That's mainly where my soccer knowledge is. I do watch Team USA friendlies occasionally. Like, I will throw on a Team USA random game. And maybe part of the reason I'm so invested is because this is maybe the best Team USA team ever. This might be the best they can do. They have to win one more to at least secure that, because 2002 they made the quarterfinals. So you have to beat Belgium in this next game. But this team is something special right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sent you a little document with what I wanted us to talk about. And I forgot to put in there the expansion stuff, because we talked about this off air before, and obviously you mentioned it. And my biggest thing with the expansion, and you know this, but my biggest thing with the expansion is that just, whatever it is with my brain that just appreciates, like, logically everything to kind of like flow out perfectly, where before. Sure. The top two teams in every group, they all advanced, and then, the first placers play the second placers. I just really struggle with, the fact that the USA as a first placer is against a third place team, and there's a first place. Sure. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but there's a first place team somewhere that's playing a second place team, and I struggle with that just because of how much we weigh, I struggle with that with just how much we weigh actually winning those knockout games. Like, if we didn't make a huge deal about USA won their first knockout game, every time I see, and I understand why they do that from a production perspective, but it bothers me that, like, we're saying that even though winning your first knockout game in this World Cup is effectively the equivalent of making it out of your group in the last World Cup. So I struggle with that a lot, and people, there's a very I'm the Grinch here in this situation. There's a very large population of people that can just appreciate and think it's awesome that Canada won their first knockout game, even though, in my view, no one cares until they win in the round of 16. I prefer the USA making their first quarterfinal narrative. But I've really struggled with that. So my solution is just to expand even further to 64, because that way my brain can appreciate it. And then I still have loved, and ironically, the two examples, luckily not on a podcast, but with my family, the two examples I've used of this game doesn't matter because both these teams are going to go through anyway, are Saudi Arabia and South Korea, and both didn't make it. So that's rough. But either way, I still do like how, the World Cup, you have those Cinderella teams of like Senegal and Ghana, and obviously those are strong teams. It's probably a bad example, but even South Korea, you don't necessarily expect them to do well. And in the past, they just get to the World Cup. You didn't, like, at least for me, I didn't watch the African qualifiers at all. I had no appreciation in the moment of Senegal making the World Cup. And the only way that I would really appreciate that is if, like, truly feel fulfilled and, like, gratified and, like, wow, Senegal, what a run, is if they made it out of groups, and it just wouldn't really happen when only the top two teams made it, and obviously the groups were tougher when there were fewer of them. Whereas now, I get the satisfaction of seeing Ghana in a knockout stage game. That's probably, again, a dumb example because I'm sure I just don't remember that team being, or either of those teams being in the knockout rounds recently. But Saudi Arabia is a good one. Iran is a team. I don't know what it is. I think it's the goalkeeper, but for some reason, I was really heartbroken when Iran didn't make it. Them and South Korea. I was more upset about Iran because I wanted to see that team in a knockout round. I don't know why. It's just how it goes.
Well,
sometimes you just have teams like that.
Well, in Iran specifically, they had the game against Egypt, where another scenario where I think a big storyline specifically with Americans is going to be the offsides rule and the way they treat it in soccer, because they're kind of in the situation. I think the best way to describe this, I saw this online, was comparing it to how we rule a catch in football, because we don't know what we're doing really with that. We just kind of decide.
Yeah.
We don't have like a set in stone way, and they don't fully have a set in stone way of offsides. Currently, it's way too technical. Like that, the Iran game against Egypt, everyone thought they scored, and then it gets taken away because there was a guy just slightly past, and it was largely because the goalie had came up. So now you had to be in front of, because the real rule is you have to be in front of two defenders, because the goalie is typically all the way back. You can't be past the goalie also. But the goalie came up, so the goalie all of a sudden was the third furthest back defender, and the two other defenders were who you had to actually be in front of, and he didn't even probably realize that in the moment, because nobody's going to realize that. And so he thought he was perfectly fine, and then the goal gets taken away. Yesterday, the Croatia one against Portugal, I think, is the most devastating one, where it's literally just because his hair touched the ball. He didn't even touch the ball, because they have the chip in the ball, and you can see the graph of when every time the ball gets hit, there's a spike. The ball did not spike when the hair hit the ball, because it didn't feel it. But the hair did clear. The hair clearly did hit the ball. But if that Croatian was just bald, if he was simply a bald man, they send the game to overtime, which is just so sometimes the rule gets a little bit where it's just brutal. It's in a rough spot, so I think Americans are a little bit annoyed by that. I understand why it's in that spot, because I'm also like a fighter that I think American football should put chips in the ball. I think there should be more usage of, in American sports, we should have more chips in our balls. I think basketball is testing that out in the summer league. I saw for NBA.
Yeah.
I think they should convert it to NBA. I just think as long as it doesn't affect the weight of the ball or the feeling of the ball, go for it. It just makes it better. And we have the tech to do it.
Yeah.
Like in football, we would know for sure what's a first down then. You would be able to instantly just tell.
Well, that's what I was about to say. It's almost like first downs, except in America, like you're saying, it's not technical enough.
Yeah.
It's kind of the exact, not the, you get the point, though. It's pretty similar. And it's tough with soccer because it's the whole thing we preach all the time is, we just want the calls to be right. And the call with the Croatia game was probably right. And that just is really
It's technically right. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah, that's wild. It's a rough one. But yeah, Iran was a tough one. So I've struggled with the expansion for that reason. So my solution is
Yeah.
just to go to 64, and there will be countries. It'll teach the
So
world more about the
yeah,
globe, at least.
I do think they're going to 64 next. I think that's happening. I think it's happening either next World Cup or the one after. It's going to happen quick. It will be very interesting to see quickly if, because people were saying that it would happen in this World Cup where the group stage would be watered down. There'd be so many terrible opponents, and there'd be a lot of like 6-1s. There really wasn't. There was like a few, but not many. So it'll be interesting if adding another 16 teams is going to finally make it that way.
Yeah.
Because like right now you brought up Senegal. Senegal is a good team, and was winning and dominating for 85 minutes of their game against Belgium, and they were third in their group because they got a tough draw against both Norway and France. So you're with the 48. We still have like stacked groups where there's still like a lot of competition. You can still get unlucky with your drawing of the group stage. So I still like that. Hopefully the world's talent is good enough to go to 64.
Yeah, I think the real solution
we'll
if we
figure that out.
Clock would have been looking at doing 32, and then if you want to make the money argument or whatever, I think we just amplify the qualifiers. Like I look back to 2018 when the USA didn't make it, and nobody was
Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, but like nobody was watching that game, and I don't even know it was happening. I feel like, and obviously I was a kid, but still, I feel like the people around me didn't know that was even happening. And then you just wake up and it's all over the news. The USA's out, and I do think it would be interesting at that point to. I'm trying to think of a good example of a team that, Cabo Verde is one, I guess, that hasn't been in the World Cup in my lifetime, is now, but maybe they were really close in the qualifiers and we just don't know it. Jamaica's one that because. Up until this World Cup for my entire life in my childhood, I get really excited about the World Cup a year and a half early, and I'd just be dying to see it, and I'd be waiting and waiting. And so I'd be watching other not watching it, but just on Wikipedia, following other qualifiers. I knew that Italy was in danger, 8 years ago. Not because I even know that much about soccer, just because there's nothing else to do in the summer but think about the next summer. In the case of the World Cup, this year was completely different. I didn't even think about it, and even in the lead up, barely even cared. And then it started, and I was like, "Wait, this is awesome, and it's perfect to get all that gratification." But my point is, I feel like if we turn back the clock and we just amplify the qualifiers and we put those on big networks, and it's cool too because it's obviously in those areas. It's kind of like having the World Cup everywhere all at once. Maybe I'm crazy here, but like I'd love to see North Macedonia trying to qualify for the World Cup, like they were able to make some magic happen. I think in the Euros a while back, and I'd love to see that. I'd love to see Italy lose in some of those late qualifying games. Obviously, you don't need to do that for the whole qualifiers, but just towards the end. I think maybe that was the real solution. But there's people smarter than me making these decisions, so it is what it is.
Yeah, I do think you're kind of onto something there, though, because in America, at least, we have something very similar to that in college basketball. Like those conference tournaments, I love watching the first week of conference tournaments. Not the second when all the big teams play, but the first week when it's teams you just never hear about. And you watch Wofford win their conference to probably lose in the first round, but just that you see just like how happy they are. And clearly it was just their goal of the season is just make the tournament. Then they'll play with house money after that, and they'll try whatever they can to win a game. But the World Cup qualifiers definitely could feel the same way if we get them on network. Like Fox, just pick up more soccer games. Like I think Fox totally has the space to just pick up more soccer games, and I love what Fox. I feel like I've loved so far the Fox production of the World Cup. I think it's been great. So they should just go all in on it.
Yeah, and so my two last things on this just came into my mind right here.
Yeah.
Part of it is I start paying attention when the World Cup starts, not when the qualifiers, in terms of actually watching the games. So when Ghana, again, Ghana's a bad example because it's actually a good team and made the knockout rounds. But, Ghana is an example of a team that, for some reason, I know this isn't an uncommon opinion, but everyone kind of loves the African teams, I feel like, at least I do. So totally. I see Ghana, and in the past, I don't get the gratification of seeing Ghana do something successful because they get grouped, which makes sense when you're with England and France or whoever. But then if we do the qualifier stuff, then I get that gratification from seeing them even qualify, and you get that no matter what. And then on the flip side, I have a family of neighbors who are Serbian, and
Okay.
in Qatar, I believe, when they were in that group with Brazil and got really close and had a really good team. Or maybe that was Russia, but either way, when Serbia was in the World Cup, that was kind of a big deal in my neighborhood because obviously that's kind of like a niche nationality to have. And I believe that was the World Cup that America wasn't in when that team was in there. And Serbia didn't qualify this year, and maybe they weren't good at all. I have no idea, but Serbia didn't qualify, and now I'm like, oh, I was waiting 4 years to watch this team again, and it's my fault for not paying attention to the qualifiers. But also, now I have to wait another 4 years, or maybe even more than that. And I guess that's how people felt about America, and I just didn't care as much as a kid to make that like a real pain for me besides just the general disappointment. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that was the solution. Doesn't matter because we'll just go to 64 anyway, and that's my solution for the moment.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar situation to your Serbia thing where the start of the World Cup, I didn't it didn't fully even click in my head when I first saw it, but there's a good amount of Haitians that live near me. And Team Haiti was terrible. They're not a very good team. They did not do well in this World Cup, but they were so happy just to be in it. Yeah. They were flooring it down Michigan Road with a Haitian flag just waving out their window, just blasting the horn, and it was awesome.
Nice.
So, yeah, that was a cool moment for me. So just definitely the nationality pride. What's helped me is I've had one of my best friends is Argentine. Mm-hmm. So that's always helped me stay invested in the World Cup because I root for him. And if you're an Argentine, you're gonna love the World Cup because your team's always good and you have the best player in the world. So you're gonna love that. So he has a lot of fun during that, and it's always roped me in at like an early age.
Yeah, absolutely. My team for that kind of was, as a kid, Belgium, and we're going to talk about that team a little bit now because the USA's up against Belgium. This World Cup, I didn't quite have the same affinity for Belgium. I always love Romelu Lukaku. Him and Egypt as well. I guess when they made it in 2018, that was kind of my team. And the Belgium is against the U.S. now in the round of 16. We'll see if America can make the first quarterfinal in a very long time. And obviously Belgium as well is a team that the U.S. has lost to in the round of 16 in years past. I believe 2014, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So you've been watching this tournament more. I'm sure you've seen Belgium at some point throughout the group stage, and I'd love to hear what you know about Belgium, because I have this Romelu Lukaku name, I have the De Bruyne name, I have all those, I have all the casual fan knowledge, but I don't know much more than that.
Yeah.
And I know they had some shaky moments in the group stage. I caught bits and pieces. What do you know about Belgium before they play the U.S.?
So that's kind of the thing about Belgium, and why me and the other U.S. fans that I've talked to have kind of quietly been hoping we play Belgium. Amongst the teams that we could have played, Belgium was up there on our list. It's partially for revenge for 2014, because that game still haunts us. We literally, Tim Howard still, to this day, has the World Cup record for saves in a game. Saved us forever in that game. I believe it was 16 saves he had. Made it 0-0 going into overtime. Like, that game had no right being... They had 16 shots on goal, and they had 0 goals. Like, that's not normal. But then in the end, who scored in 2014 for Belgium? Kevin De Bruyne and Romelu Lukaku. Like, these guys have been their guys. Their golden generation was in 2014 and 2018 and 2022. It's back in 2026, but it's a little bit older. It's a little bit too old. Lukaku comes off the bench. De Bruyne still starts, but he's 35. Courtois, I believe, maybe, their goalie, he's still great. He is one of the top goalies in the world from what I've read still to this day. So that is going to be something that we have to watch out for. But Belgium's been so beatable in this tournament. I go back to they tied 0-0 in probably the boringest game I've watched in this tournament with Iran. It was just grueling to watch that game. I watched it because I knew it mattered to the U.S. because I was pretty confident we were going to end up probably playing somebody from that group. Their game against Egypt, they have no right tying against Egypt. Now, Egypt, granted, is also moving on to the round of 16. I see Egypt as a weaker team who got a lucky draw in the round of 32, in my opinion. I think they have some younger talent that is really impressive. Specifically, I would watch out for Jeremy Doku. Lightning speed off the wing for Belgium. We are going to have to really watch out for him. I think he's probably faster than all of our defenders. He's probably faster than all of our attackers and midfielders as well. I think he's probably going to be the fastest player in this field. He's their best one-on-one player, so you could compare him kind of to our Christian Pulisic, where he's the best just beating somebody off the dribble. I think Belgium's going to need him to have a big game in the same way we're going to need to have Christian Pulisic have a big game. And so I would specifically, I think our defender matched, who will likely be somewhat matched to him, will be Serginho Dest. Due to Dest's athleticism. It might be Robertson also. I could also see that. But they're going to need to try to athletically keep up with him all game. And that might be a nightmare. You also really... Lukaku cannot play 90 anymore and will not start for Belgium. But he's going to come in those final 25 to 30 minutes, and he's still brilliant. He is still probably their best goal scorer on the team, and he will come in at the end. And U.S. has to survive that. They did not survive that in the friendly in March in the build-up to the World Cup. I believe they lost 5-2 in that game. I believe it was 2-2 at halftime. And they were right in it. And then 3 goals in the second half is just, you can't do that. 5 goals in a game you can't give up. But yeah, I mean, Belgium, they are strong, but they're not great. Their world rank right now is 9. I think that's too high. I would say they're right with us. Like, our world rank is 15. I'd put them back closer to us than up at 9. So I think it's probably a better matchup for the U.S. because I think we athletically are just younger in general. So we're going to be able to perform, I think, at a higher level. And we are in our golden generation. They are at the end of it. We probably have another World Cup in us. They are at the very end of their golden generation.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's kind of. I mean, I guess it's good to hear you say that because my idea of Belgium that could have been a misconception, but sounds like it's a little more accurate than maybe I thought. Is that obviously, like you mentioned, this team's old, and it's not necessarily old in the sense that they can't do anything this year. It's just that they're old in the sense that this is now the last chance because next World Cup in 4 years they might be really screwed, or at least they'll have to like kind of rebuild and revamp a little bit. And that kind of brings me to my next question because obviously you mentioned kind of that the attacking threat that Belgium could have 5 goals in that friendly, and the U.S. is, last I checked, not going to have Balogun. And I want to know how much that matters because coming into the tournament, I thought Pulisic was probably the best player on the team, and then after watching the Paraguay game, I thought, since the Paraguay game, whenever the U.S. has a run and he's in the game, and there's a chance to potentially score, my eyes look for Balogun first. I want to see where he is first. Yeah. So all of a sudden, I'm starting to feel like maybe he's the best player on this team. And I don't know which narrative is more correct and which one I should lean on. Is it everything is on fire, we're all going to die because Balogun's not there? Or is it, wait a second, Pulisic is still the best player and everything's fine, although obviously that's still going to hurt? How much does that matter? How much will we care if the U.S. loses? What percentage of our takeaways are a reasonable person's takeaways going to be that this red card potentially ruined everything?
Well, I can first of all guarantee you that if we do lose, first takes immediate reaction will be we lost because of Flo Balogun's red card. That will be immediate. Probably Pat McAfee's reaction. Probably ESPN in general's reaction. I think we are still better without Balogun. We are obviously a worse team without Balogun. We take a dip. He's our best goal scorer. So when you were saying Pulisic is our best player, I do still believe that. I believe Pulisic's our best player. Balogun's simply our best goal scorer. And you can see that with Pulisic. We didn't, in our last game against Bosnia and Herzegovina, in the free kick right outside the box, we put in Tillman to knock that one down. We didn't trust Pulisic in that moment because he's just, in general, he's not the best shooter on the team. Now, he can score goals, and I do feel like maybe we need him to score a goal in this game. But he's in general, as I've said earlier, he's our best one-on-one player. He will beat almost anyone with his dribbling moves one-on-one. So that typically draws 2 defenders into him constantly. and he's also our best setup man. He has the best vision on the field, and thus makes the best passes typically. I am worried though. I am worried about who's going to be in the middle, who's replacing Balogun, because Ricardo Pepi came in when we didn't have Pulisic. That was our answer for that. I don't know if he's a great Balogun replacement in general. He was solid when Balogun was still in the game, and it was both them working together on the attack. I don't know if I like Pepi being, if we're going to stick to the 4-5-1, I don't know if I love Pepi in there. I could see them going with Haji Wright instead. So you have, because just simply Haji Wright is 6'3", so you have a taller, more physical presence in the middle. I think more physical was going to be the important characteristic there, because I mean, our stats in this World Cup so far, Balogun has 11 shots. He has 3 goals. He probably should have a 4th. He got an own goal. He also probably should have had a 4th, because he should have had a 2nd goal in that game, maybe even 3. He was barely offsides in Bosnia versus Herzegovina. He also was fouled, taken down. They didn't call the foul. He was taken down, and then just still got a shot off, just barely sailed it right over the goal to end the half. Really, he probably could have had a hat trick in that last game. So we're gonna feel the loss of him. I would just put some faith in Pulisic, put faith in Pochettino, who has given no reason to doubt. There's been nothing to doubt from Pochettino so far in all of his tactical adjustments. He made the right call in the Turkey game to rest everyone. He made the right call to give Pulisic a little bit of a warm-up in the final 30 minutes of that game. He's just overall, I feel like, made the right coaching decisions. I'm going to trust the U.S. here. I think we will need Flo Balogun if we do anything past the round of 16. Because our next opponent after that would be Portugal or Spain. We will need Flo Balogun in one of those games. But we do not need him in this game to win.
Gotcha. We'll have to see how that one plays out. And certainly, obviously, there's the hope that this team does advance to the quarterfinals. And I think then if it's not appointment television already, then it's like, here we go. It's either Ronaldo or it's Spain, and either way, that's going to be an absolute thrill. So, final prediction. It sounds like you think the U.S. is going to win, regardless of obviously whether or not he's playing.
I do. If I had to make a final prediction, I think we win this game 2-1, but we're up 2-0 at halftime.
Okay. And then is it Lukaku?
We give up a goal. Yeah, I see that happening. I do think Lukaku could break through. I think we give up a goal because we play back a little bit, but we control it at the end, similar to how we did against Bosnia and Herzegovina. Obviously, Belgium way more talented than Bosnia. But I think we will find a way to control at the end and hold on for those last 45 minutes.
All right. And that's actually kind of my best case scenario, because Lukaku's kind of my guy. At least he was when I was a kid. I'll probably feel that again, at least to some degree, secretly, over the course of this game, especially considering that if it isn't his last run, it's very close. Moving away from that, and maybe this actually involves America, the question I'm about to ask, but I want to know, after you've seen every team in the groups, you've seen at least all the teams that are still in contention of this conversation, you see them win, or if they haven't yet played or haven't yet seen a final result in their knockout game, then you have some idea of what's going on with these teams in the knockout rounds. I'm interested in how many teams are still true title contenders and who are they.
Okay.
And I'm mostly listening to hear which names you don't say, and maybe there will be more about that a little bit later on as well. I know it's obviously very difficult to tell, but if you're making a list of, like sometimes certain, sports media organizations do at the beginning of the college football season, here's the teams that can win the Super Bowl, here's the teams that can win the national championship, who at this point can still win the World Cup. There's 18 teams left still alive. There'll be 16 at the end of today.
Okay. Easy one is a team currently playing right now. Argentina totally can go back-to-back. I would not predict it. I do think that their reliance on Messi is maybe a little bit too high. He is still a phenomenal player, but at the age of 38 or 39, I think he just turned, have the endurance to last for the rest of the tournament, especially with the tournament getting a game longer for him. That makes it more challenging for them. France 100% can win this tournament. Probably is the favorite. I think that makes sense. They have a game against Paraguay for this next game. That's a great matchup for them. We've seen what we can do against Paraguay. I would be shocked. If they don't find a way to handle Paraguay as well. I think Spain is another easy one. They have not let up a goal yet in this tournament. I know they tied with Cabo Verde to start. Cabo Verde does not seem like they're that bad. And since then, Spain has been a different team, and they're really good. They won the Euros 2 years ago. They're really good. Watch out for them. I think Brazil can win. They're not the Brazil of the old. They're not as good, but I like their matchup against Norway. I do think Erling Haaland is tough to defend. He's the best goal scorer in the world right now. I think Brazil just has overall more balance and more talent outside of the one player for Norway. So I think they will find a way to win that game. And I do think the U.S. has a shot. It's not a likely chance. It's a biased pick, maybe. I do think we have a chance. The team is special. And the U.S. has always had this chant, which is the, I believe that we can win. I believe that we can win. We've never once believed it. We never actually have believed that we can win this tournament. It's kind of like our coping mechanism to try to act like we do, but we don't actually. I don't think we need that chant anymore because I think we actually just do believe that we could win this. I think this is a year we could win. Pochettino's been talking about it. Pochettino talked about, and maybe he's still getting laughed at by some people in media, but he is still talking about how this team can win the World Cup. So I think they have a chance to win. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to snub some teams, potentially, but I'm going to leave it at that.
So notably, and I'll leave out some of the teams that are consensus, not picks. Maybe Morocco. I'm sure people in Morocco are sure that team has a chance.
They're good.
To do it. You didn't say
I think
Portugal.
they can make a semifinal. But
okay. All right. So that would obviously you're not predicting that, but that would involve beating France, which would be really wild.
Yeah, it's really tough. It's really tough. That's kind of why I don't think they can do it.
And if you want to talk about America really believing they could win, that would certainly.
We also have to take down France. Yeah,
could make that happen. You didn't say Portugal, which I think is understandable.
I did not,
but still would upset a lot of people probably. You didn't say Mexico or England. England's obviously the big one there, and then Egypt and Switzerland are probably consensus picks. But
and same with Cabo Verde.
So in terms of winning a championship at the World Cup, England, Mexico, kind of doesn't matter. Obviously it does because it'll still have ripple effects. But in your eyes, the winner is not going to go on to win.
I just haven't liked what I've seen out of England. I know that in theory they should be. I think so. The reason I'm saying this is because I think that Mexico cannot win the World Cup. They're not talented enough. They're not good enough. But also, I think Mexico beats England. So I don't think Mexico can actually go win it all. But I do think Mexico, with their crowd in Mexico City, which I don't know if you've seen the headlines, is a legitimately deadly crowd. But I do believe Mexico is going to win that game. I don't think they get past Brazil or Norway, but I think Mexico wins that game because of the home court or home field, and England can't win if they can't get past Mexico. So I think England's more talented on paper and probably wins if England probably wins this entire tournament if it's in England. Like if they are hosting this in London, they probably just go and win this thing. But it being in America is not friendly to England in general. And I just don't think they can do it.
All right. Well, I mean, you're not alone. There are certainly plenty of people that disagree right there. I think that if you, based on your answers and based on just my expectations, I think that your semifinal picks then are France, Brazil, Argentina, and then are you going America, Spain, or Portugal here? That's my question. You probably have to go America, I feel like, if you're going to say
I'm going to be biased and go America because I can.
Yeah, and then obviously America losing to France is a way more. They're all acceptable losses, but that's a way more okay.
It's more likely
at some point.
And I will just be so thrilled to be there if we make it a semifinal. Like, and I will get up for the third place game also. Like, I will just be so excited.
I forgot about that. That would be a part of that whole thing.
You get a third place game. Yeah.
Like America, or even like America, Argentina for third place. Oh, man.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome. You're right. Okay, so America, France, Brazil, Argentina, that would be a thrill if that were to happen. Those are obviously some great matchups. Are there any matchups? Obviously, Argentina's on right now. We got Colombia and Ghana later on tonight. That's a game that I really love. Colombia's just fun.
I like that one.
And you know how I feel about Ghana. So any matchups in the round of 16 or any matchups maybe beyond that point that aren't maybe overly discussed, that if they do happen, they'd be fun for a certain reason. Is there anything that jumps to mind, obviously, besides the great America-Belgium matchup?
Yeah, okay, so Canada-Morocco is sneakily good because of Morocco should win this game. And they shouldn't. They are more talented. They are a better team. But Morocco likes to score late or not score much at all. Like, they like to keep... The games are typically lower scoring with Morocco. So that's going to keep Canada, I think, in the game for a while. And Canada hanging on to potentially make a quarterfinal is just a fun potential thing. I don't think they'll win. But I think Morocco probably wins like 1-0. And just the fact that if at any moment Canada could tie this game and send it to overtime, that will be an exciting watch. Portugal-Spain is obviously just an amazing matchup. Those two countries hate each other, in terms of sports teams at least. I don't know politically. But in terms of sports teams, they hate each other. That it will also be it's Ronaldo's potential last game for Portugal, facing up against the 18-year-old phenom Lamine Yamal. That's a wild matchup. I don't think that one has to be like too crazy. Whenever Norway plays, just whoever they play against is almost always must watch because Erling Haaland is a specimen that I think we would see in history books if he was born 500 years ago to like 1,000 years ago, because he'd be the scariest Viking in history.
Gotcha.
So he is terrifying, and I think Brazil will win this game. But if Holland can do it, that's going to be very fun to watch. Also, the rowing the boat is really fun. Mm-hmm. England, Mexico. Like, I feel like all these games are almost always. I'm saying all these are awesome, but like England, Mexico is awesome because that's going to be an upset, in my opinion. That is awesome. That crowd will just be insane. I don't know if there will be an England fan left in that crowd. That crowd is just going to be wild. That crowd it will be tough for the U.S. crowd in Seattle to beat that England crowd. Now, I'm going to put out that challenge. That's a challenge for our U.S. crowd in Seattle. Let's go have the best crowd. But that Mexico crowd will be intense and amazing. And that's probably it. I think Colombia-Ghana could be a fun one tonight. I do think Colombia is superior to Ghana. But if Ghana could pull that off, Ghana has a very realistic path to a quarterfinal appearance. So they will be wildly thrilled if they pull off that upset, because they then get Switzerland next round, which is doable. Most teams would want to see Switzerland in the round of 16.
Yeah.
That's a team you want to face.
Yeah. And that you make a good point. The first thing that jumped out to me there was the Canada piece, where at least I fall into this trap of I do all this, let's imagine the future scenarios, and I just rule out certain teams to win a game because I'm just thinking to myself, I mean, obviously Paraguay is more of a long shot, but just rule out Paraguay. They're out of the tournament in my mind.
Now, if Paraguay is within a goal towards the end, that's maybe the best game of this round, because that would be maybe the biggest upset. I'm not a soccer historian, but maybe ever in the World Cup. I don't know. Yeah. It would be up there.
I mean, it might have to be, because that's a third-place team who's, you just can't. It's physically impossible to get third place and go to the quarterfinals to this point. But yeah, like that Canada game would be especially awesome if Canada actually won. So you make a good point there, and I feel the same about all of those teams towards the bottom of the bracket. I mean, Egypt, which is kind of a darling team for me. Switzerland, I haven't really jumped on board with. I'm sure I should. I probably will, but like I just haven't connected with them quite as much. I felt the same about South Africa. It's like the one African team that I just, for some reason, never. Maybe it's because they played first and didn't do well. Like I couldn't connect with them, which was interesting. And yeah, so that'll be very fun. It's interesting that some of those upset teams can still win, even if they won't. And now that I think about it, the thought of America, Canada, and Mexico, although they're all the hosts, being in the quarterfinals is kind of outrageous, especially because of what that means in terms of who's not in the quarterfinals. When you look at England and, obviously Croatia, who's already lost, etc. This World Cup will be a lot of fun. I think, obviously it already is, but the rest will be really fun. And it's kind of that point where you realize, just like with the NCAA tournament, that the upsets are all fun. All of these small teams are fun, and then also you have the separate fun of Michigan, UConn, or
the big dogs playing each other.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. Especially if obviously America's in the mix, that's just going to be an absolute thrill.
Yeah, if we get through, and we have to play Spain to make it to our first ever semifinal since technically we made it in 1930. But if you look up 1930 World Cup, once you made it out of your group, you were in the semifinal. So it's less impressive when you look into that fact. But I will say first modern, at least, semifinal appearance. And you have to get past the best European team. But we have the home field. That would just be a wild experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be a lot of fun. Well, we'll have to do this again, especially if America wins the World Cup, or even if they go out. I feel like that's going to be a monumental moment, especially if it happens sooner rather than later. But yeah, I want to give you, before we get out of here, I want to give you the floor for a second to promote your work. I know you're doing some cool stuff. I'll let you speak for yourself on that. But yeah, brag a little bit. Where can the people find this Campbell that's been talking about the World Cup?
Well, I've been talking a lot about the World Cup on my Substack, which is just Substack. Just look up Campbell Manahan and you will find me. I put out before this a challenge that if Argentina, which they're currently up 1-0, so I'm looking pretty good. But I said if Argentina loses to Cabo Verde, I will have to walk 50 miles. I'll hold my end of that bargain if they end up somehow losing this game. I also have write for Hoosier Huddle. We are doing a piece a day on every single player on the Indiana football roster. I just put one out today. So just, go onto that site, look at that. Look out for some more content coming in the future that's maybe not even World Cup focused. I'm going to be doing some more Substack work for sure. Especially when I'm going to be I'm trying to go to all 3 days of Big Ten Media Day for college football. So I will be trying to do a lot of content for that, and that'll be a lot of fun. So look out for stuff involving that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also considering that with Big Ten Media Days. The biggest thing with me is and I don't know what your situation is, but I'd probably have to, fund hotels on my own, and that's the one hang up for me. I don't know if I want to.
Have you looked into it? Have you looked into it? Because it's scary out there. Because it's Lollapalooza weekend, which I didn't realize until now.
I didn't know that either, and that's a real shame.
It's
and
terrifying.
At the same time,
yeah.
So obviously media days are for the Big Ten, and this is off topic and outrageous, but the 28th through 30th of July, and my girlfriend's birthday is 26, and she wants to do a little day trip to Chicago too, which I'm totally want to do. That would be, and I'd go to Chicago. I probably couldn't go and stay, but go, come back, and then go again.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great. I did not know it was Lollapalooza, and that explains a lot.
I'm just trying to find the crappiest hotel in Chicago at this point. That's my goal, because it's 250,000 people that come to the city for that event. That's a lot of people in hotels. That's like the Indy 500.
Think about the trains
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that explains a lot. What was I going to say? Part of me is, because we're young, and part of me is thinking about the people that are established in the industry, and they have all these stories of I spent all my money on this, or the people just gamble it all away. And in my head, I'm like, maybe this is my moment to just no matter what number there is in my bank account, maybe we just go. I don't know. No matter what.
I don't know what your take is, but I'm looking into into Gary and Hammond, Indiana. Like I'm looking
It's
into
over.
stuff like that also.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, yeah, you've
But
definitely done more research than me. I was going to think about that tonight. I might have to. It might just be a day trip on the day that IU is there.
that
But
it
yeah,
might be like that for me, but I hope I can go to all three.
yeah, that'll be the dream. We'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, so certainly a lot of IU football stuff coming from both of us a little bit later on.
Yeah.
I mean, now, obviously, as you mentioned, but especially a little bit later on as we get into July and August. That'll be a thrill. The summer's flying by,
Yeah.
but it's not flying by too fast for us to watch the World Cup. Thank you for coming. Whoa, my goodness. Thank you for coming on, Campbell. We'll have to do this another time, a little bit later on in the tournament. And yeah, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All righty. See you next time. All right. Welcome back to the Andrew Garrison Show. Big thanks to Campbell Manahan for coming on. That was a lot of fun. We talked about the World Cup quite a bit, about 45 minutes. That was great. Argentina's up on Cabo Verde right now. I'll have to see how that game's going once I get done with this. But there's a couple more things I want to talk about today. We're going to talk about the WNBA, and then we're going to talk about Auburn football. Auburn football is just something that's kind of been on my mind. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. I wrote about it at Garrison's Gradient, my personal Substack, publication over there. But I want to talk about the WNBA first because it's a little bit more timely and a little bit more urgent. I want to do kind of and at this point in the season, most teams have played 20 games. A 20 games in assessment of title tiers is what I'm going to call it. WNBA title tiers. I want to talk about every single team. I'm going to hit on all 15 and I'm going to put them into, I have 4 categories of levels based on their likelihood of winning a championship or their contention for a championship or how involved they are in the championship race at this time. At the very top, I've got the true title contenders, where not only do I think that they're title contenders now, but I think they're going to stay that way over the course of the rest of the season, and I feel pretty much absolutely certain that that's going to be the case. The first one is the Minnesota Lynx, who I think, they're 15-4. They have the best record of the league. Defisa Collier has hardly even played yet. They were a semifinal. They won the title 2 years ago. They were a semifinal team last year, and then obviously there were some various moves in the offseason, but 2 of them were grabbing Natasha Howard from the Indiana Fever, who I know a lot about, and also Olivia Miles, one of those, it's absolutely ridiculous that this team has a pick that high situations. And Olivia Miles comes in and is probably going to win Rookie of the Year and is one of the better players on the team. And again, they have an MVP or a previous MVP in Nafisa Collier who's hardly even hit the floor yet. It's comparable to 2 situations in the NBA. You could compare it. If you're more of an NBA fan than a WNBA fan, here's how I would compare it. You could say the Celtics with Jason Tatum just coming back, but I think it's less of that and more of the Thunder 2 years ago, Chet Holmgren, where they had the best record in the league. They were the best team in the league. They were not necessarily, they were far and away above everyone else in the West. Maybe not everyone in the entire NBA, but definitely in the West, the Thunder were significantly ahead of everybody else, and there was just this looming threat of, oh yeah, and Chet Holmgren's going to come back. It's different because Nafisa Collier has won the MVP. She's a little bit more experienced. She's more proven. She is comparatively better than Chet Holmgren. And also the gap between the Thunder and the rest of the West compared to the fact that there's so much parity in the WNBA. But that's more of a representation of this Lynx situation to me, because I actually think the Lynx can win. Well, obviously, I think the Lynx can win the championship. They're one of my true title contenders, and the Thunder obviously did win the championship. So the Lynx could potentially win 2 championships in 3 years. We have this weird situation where, and this is the other team. This will transition well into my next point. The other team in this category for me right now, there's only 2, is the Las Vegas Aces. We're in this weird situation where both of these teams, the Aces could win 4 titles in 5 years, and the Lynx could win 2 titles in 3 years. And that's really interesting. That's really strange. I'm sure that's not that crazy, but it sounds interesting. If those 2 teams are in the finals, we're guaranteed to have, one of those fascinating situations where you say, this is a dynasty or this is a dynasty. And maybe that leads us into 2027 where you could say there's 2 dynasties at the same time, right? The Lynx, I don't know if that qualifies as a dynasty. I think it probably does. If the Lynx make the semifinals at least the semifinals 3 years in a row and win the title 2 of those years, I feel like in today's professional basketball where it's so hard to keep teams together, I feel like that qualifies as a dynastic run in this situation. And then also at the same time, you'd have an Aces team that would, if they were to win the championship, could win 4 in 5 years. And if they don't, then maybe it's a 3 in 5 years situation, which is perhaps equally impressive or perhaps more impressive as winning 2 titles in 3 years. So you could have 2 teams that are either dynasties or a title away from a dynasty at the same time. And that's fascinating. That's strange. It's interesting. I'd love to see that happen. That finals would be electric. It'd be awesome. We didn't see those 2 teams play each other in the playoffs. a year ago, the Lynx lost to the Mercury, and the Aces were able to beat the Fever in the semifinals. They were on separate sides. It was something that you could argue we were robbed of, especially considering that we had that sweep in the WNBA finals with the Aces over the Mercury. We could have seen Aces Lynx. It didn't happen. It is what it is. And the Mercury are, if there's karma out there, and if that's something that is karmically punishable, then the Mercury are kind of being punished for it right now. They're 8-13. But the two teams that I would consider true title contenders, and the way I qualify that, the way I constitute that category is they're title contenders now. If the season ended right now, they would be they're obviously the two best teams in the league in terms of their record, and also there's the fact that I think, or the thought that I think that these two teams are going to be, barring injury, title contenders the rest of the way. They've proven it, they've backed it up, and I expect that to continue to be the case throughout the future. The Lynx and the Aces are in that top category for me. Then I have the don't let them get hot category. These are all teams that I expect to be in the playoffs, and I'd be surprised, I'd be borderline stunned if any of these teams were in the playoffs. I have 4 of them, so that effectively rounds out our top 6, and then I have a huge category after this one called the prove it category, where you have a ton of teams kind of fighting for those last 2 spots in the playoffs. Obviously, the seeding could shake up a little bit, but I think by the end of this, we'll have the Lynx and the Aces at the top and the top 2 spots, potentially setting up for a great WNBA finals. But then obviously there's a ton of teams that really have a chance. So the Valkyries, the Dream, the Liberty, and the Wings are all in my don't let them get hot category. It's not to say that they're not title contenders. It's to say that they're not necessarily perfect teams. Not that the Lynx and the Aces are, but if this team goes the wrong direction, which is possible, I don't think there's a chance that they drop out of title contendership, or they haven't necessarily, they've proven it, but we know that they can be that, but they're not that right now. So it's either they're not a title contender right now, but we think they're going to be, or it's reasonable to safely assume that they're going to be, or they are a title contender right now, but you're not quite sure if that's going to maintain itself throughout the rest of the season. The Golden State Valkyries are an example of the latter category. They're 13-7. They're great. They're winning a lot of games. They're beating a lot of good teams. But I wonder if that's going to last quite in the same way that it will with the Aces and the Lynx, right? They could get outstarred in the playoffs. You have Aja Wilson, you have Nafisa Collier, Olivia Miles is, very rapidly reaching that category. Probably needs another year before she transitions from young star to true star. But the Valkyries, I wonder if there's not a number one player that is far and above the rest, which isn't necessarily an indictment against the Valkyries. Again, they're winning games, but they have multiple players. They don't have any players that are averaging more than 16 points per game. They have multiple players, a really nice core that are all sort of rotating through the leading scorer role, and it's a much more balanced offense in that way. And it's a very defensive team, but it's a much more balanced offense in that way, which is a good thing, because on one hand, you have the thought that at any moment, any one of those players could pop and drop 40 and knock off a really good team in a win or go home situation in the playoffs. And on the other hand, you have the idea that in that same moment, there's a chance that nobody shows up. And you wouldn't necessarily be surprised if nobody shows up in stars in that way. So there's a chance that they get outstarred in the playoffs, which is the reason why I think it could be difficult for the Valkyries to beat, for example, the Aces and the Lynx, which might be what it takes in the playoffs to get through. Obviously not necessarily if the bracket lines up a different way, but there are a lot of really good teams, and I wonder if the Valkyries can win multiple in a row, and that's why they're there right now. They're 13-7. They're right up with those top two teams. But I don't know if that's going to last the rest of the season, and they have plenty of time to tell me that they deserve to be in that top category. The Atlanta Dream also are they're the opposite, right? They're 12-8. They should be there. They're right up there in the mix. They are, in theory, there's coming into the season, we felt like there might be 3 strong teams at the top: the Liberty, the Lynx, and the Aces. And the Dream, with that addition of Angel Reese and with some of those retentions and offseason moves, it seemed like they could be right up there at number 4, or at least very, very close. I don't know if we trust Angel Reese in the playoffs because we haven't seen her in the playoffs yet. And I wrote about this actually at Garrison's Gradient. You can go check it out if you'd like. It's on Substack. Look up Garrison's Gradient, you'll find it. I wrote about Angel Reese and the Dream after they beat the Sky. Angel Reese's return to Chicago in the regular season. She was there in the preseason, but in the regular season, her return, I wrote about that because I love the way this team's constructed. They have 3-point shooters. They have a lot of great elite guards. They have Angel Reese, who, if nothing else, can just rebound and kick the ball out. She can obviously score herself too and has some of those moments, but for the most part, the way that team is constructed with some great guards and Angel Reese able to rebound and kick the ball out, I felt like that worked really, really well against the Sky a few weeks ago. I feel like it's been working very well for this team. The question is, Angel Reese in a playoff game, From a plus minus perspective, there's a chance against a better big than her, or a more experienced, or whatever it may be. If she's on the road in the playoffs, it's all some things that she hasn't experienced quite yet in that setting. And I wonder if there's a chance that Atlanta's front court kind of just falls through the floor if it doesn't quite work out the way that this team wants it to right now with Angel Reese in the playoffs. I'm not saying that she's going to be bad. I'm just saying we don't know. We haven't seen that before. We probably will see that this year. Again, barring injury and barring complete unexpected disaster with the Dream missing the playoffs. We'll probably see that, and that's one of the things I'm super fascinated about with the WNBA playoffs when we get to that point. Angel Reese on the Dream, how does that go? It's a better team than the Sky. Can Angel Reese elevate and thrive in that way, or does she drag down the Dream a little bit, in the most meaningful moments? That's what I'm interested to see with the Dream. That's why they're in category number 2. The Liberty should, in so many parallel universes, the Liberty are in category 1. There's 3 teams up there. The problem is they've had some injury issues. It's not their fault. Sabrina's missed a lot of games. They've played 20, and they've won 12, and Sabrina's only played 8 games. So in that situation, it's difficult. She's not the only player that's been injured, but obviously when your best player is injured for quite a while, that doesn't help. So the Liberty have had some struggles with that. It's not their fault, but they're in this category because it's just going to take some time for them to jump back up and kind of prove that a shaky start to the season due to forces outside of their control isn't going to define the entire season. I'm sure that's where they're going to end up being, but again, in order to be in the true title category, you have to be a true title contender right now and in the future, in my mind. The Liberty are in the future, but they're not right now, right? They're too injured. There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of issues, a lot of volatility with the roster. Almost none of it is their fault. It's just the way it is. The Dallas Wings are the 4th and final team in my don't get hot category. That's category 2. I don't actually really know if they're a title contender in the future or now, but they're in this category because I love Paige Bueckers. And because Paige Bueckers in the playoffs, I think is going to not necessarily surprise people because she's not someone you'd be surprised to see succeed in the playoffs. But I think the level of that success might surprise people. We saw Caitlin Clark in her first, not to compare the two, but we saw Caitlin Clark in year 1 with the Fever after they had the number 1 pick. Caitlin Clark took the Fever to the playoffs and they lost. They were swept in round 1. They lost 2-0. That's something that Paige Bueckers hasn't done, and although it's not because it's not a one-on-one game, but Paige Bueckers in the Wings did not make the playoffs last year. In year 2, and by the way, Caitlin Clark's year 2, obviously she was injured during the playoffs, and the Fever still made it for pretty far without her. They took the Aces to Game 5 of the WNBA semifinals. But there's a world where in year 2, barring injury, barring complete disaster, the Wings are probably in the playoffs. I think we'd all expect that at this point. I'd be surprised if they weren't. I'd be really surprised if I wasn't watching Paige Bueckers' playoff games, barring injury. And when we get to that point, I totally think the Wings can win a series. And I totally think the Wings can knock off a team like the Aces. As a matter of fact, they beat the Aces twice already. So the Wings are a team that totally in Dallas, I think could knock off someone great. And just personally, and I'm not a Wings fan, but I love Paige Bueckers. I can't stop watching her. I can't stop loving watching her. And I can't stop wanting to continue that experience. And so I will probably be just naturally rooting for the Wings a little bit when we get to that point in the postseason. And if it's the Wings versus the Valkyries, if it's the Wings versus the Dream, the Wings versus the Liberty, even the Aces or the Lynx, mainly the Aces, I totally think the Wings could win. I think they could be in the WNBA Finals if the bracket breaks the right way. Remember, the Fever without Caitlin Clark last year were a game away from the WNBA Finals, and although they didn't actually make it, and although the Aces were probably almost always going to win that series, regardless of how many games Indiana was able to win, still, you look at that and you realize just how not easy it is to get to the WNBA Finals, but just how attainable it is, because whereas in the NBA, where there are double the amount of teams in the playoffs and all the rounds are 7 games, here it's not unthinkable at all that the Wings could just spring an upset and flip a series in round 1, right? Knock off a team like the Valkyries, just like the Fever without Caitlin Clark did against the Dream, where the Dream were probably picked universally to win that series, and the Fever with some great Game 3 heroics were able to flip it. And they won, and then from there, it's a 5-game series, and the Fever against the Aces, who swept the Mercury in the WNBA Finals, absolutely deserved that championship. The Aces, the Fever took them to 5 and totally could have beat them. And there's a parallel universe where that happens, and the Fever are in the finals, and maybe the Fever win the championship without Caitlin Clark, which would be unthinkable, and maybe the Mercury just go ahead and win the championship. But no matter which one happens, that's a world where the Aces, who in this universe we're talking about as a team that unequivocally deserved to win the championship, and in a not very far away parallel universe, there's a world where they didn't even make it to the finals. Now, obviously, the discourse in that parallel universe would be different. the what ifs are kind of silly because the Aces did beat the Fever in the semifinals. They did unequivocally beat, just comprehensively destroy the Mercury in the finals. The Aces obviously deserve that championship and obviously deserve all of the credit for it. I'm not trying to take away that or discredit that at all, but it's worth pointing out for the purpose of looking to the future that the Wings could totally spring an upset against one of these teams in one round. And the point I'm making and the reason why they're in this category is I think it'd be more than just a first round upset. I think there's a world where the Wings and Pagebackers are in the WNBA finals. And again, that's if it's not in this universe, it's not very many parallel universes away. You're not going to have to jump timelines very far, or at least jump very many timelines before you get to that point where Pagebackers is in the WNBA finals this season. And if it doesn't happen, it's going to happen very soon. If it's not this season, it's going to happen very soon. Obviously, the Wings aren't one of the two best teams in the league. But again, the WNBA playoffs are super fun and super tight and super hotly contested. And a player like Paige Beckers is exactly the type of player that could really carry this team, kind of like Kelsey Mitchell, really carry this team to an upset win in round one and an upset win in round two. So those are the teams that I am in, don't let them get hot territory with. And then I have a massive category that I'll run through just called the prove it category, right? Where they're not almost guaranteed playoff teams, right? The top two teams I not only know are going to be in the playoffs with my full heart, but I also know that they're going to be in the mix to win a championship. And if they're not in the semifinals, we'll be talking about them as a championship contender when we get to the playoffs. The don't let them get hot category, categorizes teams that maybe are either title contenders now and not in the future, or title contenders now and are in the future. But also, I'm almost certain that they're going to be in the playoffs. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they didn't. Or I would be completely shocked if they didn't make it. And then you have the prove it category where maybe they could push up into that second category. Maybe if everything breaks right, they can push up into the first category. Or maybe they can just be like the Wings. More likely, they'll just be like the Wings, where maybe they could make something happen and spring an upset in round one, maybe round two. The first team that really fits that example is the Indiana Fever. The Indiana Fever, if we continue to do these rankings, are going to fluctuate. They're going to rise up. They're going to drop back down. And again, the Fever could be the Wings, where just like last year with the Fever, where once Caitlin Clark gets hurt and is announced as out for the season, it's kind of understood the Fever aren't going to win a championship. Well, they kind of almost did. And obviously, a 7-game series against the Mercury would be really difficult. And they didn't even make it that far. So it's unfair to say that they almost won a championship. It's not really true. I shouldn't have said that. But the Fever, right, upset win over the Dream, who totally could have made some noise, and then nearly an upset over the Aces. And, if they have Caitlin Clark in that situation, maybe it happens. They do have Caitlin Clark this year. So if everything breaks right for the Fever, and there's been some weird drama, all that social media speculation with Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark, most of which I think is unsubstantiated and a little bit ridiculous. The Clark stuff, some of the injury stuff, she's been probable with her back for a while. You just had the Alyssa Thomas debacle. The Fever are figuring themselves out. And I think that, and I'm confident, just like the Liberty, they just need time to kind of prove that a weird start to the season doesn't define the entire season. And when they get to that point, they'll be in category number 2. They'll be in tier 2. And again, if things break the right way, they could even be in tier 1. At this point, I'm not sure if they quite deserve that very elite status. But I think the Fever will be in the playoffs by the time we get to that point. And just like the Wings, I think they could be a team with a young star who's probably just a true star now. And Caitlin Clark, definitely just a true star now. Maybe the face of the league, probably the face of the league. And Caitlin Clark, who could potentially carry this team to 1 or 2 series wins, no matter who the opponent is. The Mystics are next. There really is a gap between the Fever and the rest of this category, but I didn't feel comfortable putting the Fever in that top category, in that tier 2 just yet, just because they're figuring themselves out. They need some time to launch back into that range. The Mystics are also in this category. I love Sonia Citron. I love Shakira Austin. I love Kiki Arafian. That rookie class is just spectacular. I love them all. I loved them last year. They didn't win enough games for me to pay enough attention to them, but they kind of are winning enough games now. They've won 5 of their last 7. They might really have something. And again, if they don't now, they will soon. The West has won, at least the last 3. The West has won a lot. The West is clearly better and deeper, I think, right now. Obviously, they have one more team as well. But the Mystics within the East, I think, totally, without question, could be, launch into equivalence with the Atlanta Dream, for example, where the Dream and the Mystics aren't that far off in terms of the composition of the team. Mystics have a lot of great guards. They just have a great balanced team overall. Maybe a couple offseason moves, maybe one more year even for all these players to develop. And this is where you realize with the Fever that you kind of have to, if Caitlin Clark stays in Indiana her whole career, you just, The rest of the WNBA is going to catch up a little bit to that stardom, and eventually it's going to become a little bit less likely that this team is able to go win a championship easily, as maybe we thought would be the case when she was drafted. And the Mystics are a great example where you could just lose to the Mystics in the first round of the playoffs in a best-of-3 series, and the dream is over. And we'll see if the first round of the playoffs remains a best-of-3 series for the long-term future. But the Mystics are a team that maybe it's not this year, but oh boy, it's coming. And this team will be a top 4 seed. I'm a rising sophomore at IU. By the time I graduate college, I think the Mystics will be a top 4 seed in the WNBA, or at least be on that level. And if the East is really deep, and if there's a ton of talent up there, and if none of it really drops or wavers, then maybe that would be a little bit more difficult. And maybe they'd be a 5 or 6 seed that's really close with the 4 seed. But they will be on that level for sure very soon, and probably winning playoff series very soon. I just love that core. I love Sonia Citron as the leader. And they seem like, from a front office perspective, at least from a drafting perspective, that they're putting themselves in the right position to take the right steps and put the right feet forward. The Toronto Tempo are also in this category. Sandy Brondello was really hard to bet against, really hard to root against. I honestly, over the course, I didn't pay attention to the WNBA offseason as nearly as much as I should. And missing that I remember seeing that she was leaving the Liberty. I don't know if I saw that she was going to Toronto. And I was just watching a game one day earlier in the season. I was like, oh my goodness, like, is that who I think it is? And I took a second to figure out, and then I couldn't even fathom that she wasn't on the Liberty anymore, or with the Liberty anymore. So I love the Tempo because I love Sandy. Marina Mabry, who had a weird moment with Caitlin Clark. I mean, you can see the fever poster behind me. I'm not going to pretend like it's not there. But, like I'm in Indiana. For all intents and purposes, a Fever fan. I watched every Fever game last year, and not a whole lot of WNBA outside of that. Now I kind of just watch what's on TV, and I don't record Fever games and watch them after closing shifts at work quite as much anymore. I'm more of a WNBA fan across the board. So the Marina Mabry stuff, though, last year was a little bit tricky with the Sun, and obviously that little debacle with Caitlin Clark. But, she just dropped 53 the other day, so maybe she's awesome and maybe on the level of a star. Maybe this team can string together wins. They're not necessarily inconsistent, but they haven't been able to string together those wins and really put a winning streak together recently. They're 9-10 right now, maybe in year one of the Tempo, at least in the modern world, in 2026. Maybe this team could push into the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised at all. The Sparks are 8-10. They're in this category. They've had some injury issues too. They have a nice core. I like this team. I'd love to see the Sparks in the playoffs and relevant. The weird, like, Caitlin Clark, Lexi Hull, and Sophie Cunningham to LA stuff was, like, again, unsubstantiated, but kind of fascinating, because the thought of the WNBA having a team in LA that's just accruing so much interest and gathering so much attention is kind of fascinating. Kelsey Plum and Cameron Brink would be great to make that happen as well. And I hope they do. I hope the Sparks make the playoffs this year. I think playoff games in LA would be fun for the WNBA. And I think it'd be really good for the WNBA's growth to have a Sparks team in LA where, maybe you can have celebrities courtside and really make it a big deal, kind of like the Knicks. The Liberty are awesome, but the Barclays Center isn't quite the same as Madison Square Garden, obviously. And that's a big market team that has a real fan base and has kind of a celebrity fan base to it. But I just feel like the Sparks in LA would kind of feel maybe like the Knicks in New York with the NBA, or just the Lakers. It's probably all the same. But I think the Sparks could have that real big city feel to them, and that's something that I'd be really excited about and really interested in. Injury issues, but a nice core. The Sparks are in category or tier number 3. The Portland Fire are here. 3 losses in a row for the Fire. They've really got to turn it around. Maybe they have a strong enough core. Maybe they don't. They don't really need to turn it around. They're 8-12. It's an expansion team. It's not offensive that this team is where it's at. The Valkyries obviously performed above average, maybe above expectations as an expansion team a year ago. And then you have the Phoenix Mercury at 8-13, who had a terrible start to the season, but seemed to be on their way back up. They're 8-13 now. Obviously their record was much worse very recently this season. So maybe the Mercury will make the playoffs, maybe not. Again, there's 6 teams that I think are confirmed. And from there, I mean, the Fever and the Mercury would both be back in the playoffs if they were to make it. The Storm, who are in my next category, are undoubtedly going to be out. So we're going to have at least 1 new team in the playoffs, maybe 2. If the Fever and the Sparks can't quite pull it together. Or excuse me, not the Sparks. If the Fever and the Mercury can't quite pull it together. If it is too late for the Mercury and the Fever get in, like I think, then it's going to be a really interesting race between the Mystics, the Sparks, and some expansion teams to get into the playoffs. But the teams that I don't think are going to be in the playoffs almost no matter what are Chicago, Seattle, and Connecticut. This is the pack it up category. This is the season's over. There's still much to gain from playing all these games, but it's not going to be a playoff appearance. The Sky I wanted to believe in because I love Natasha Cloud, and she deserves better. The Sky, they're 6-13. I struggle with it. I wanted to like this team. I really did. I really, really wanted to like this team. And I thought that the Angel Reese, move could potentially be beneficial for both sides in the sense that, again, I like how Reese fits with the Dream a lot this season. And at the same time, a new look for the Sky, not building around Reese, who I don't think is a player that you can really build around. I think she certainly can be supplemental, and that's why I think she's so great in Atlanta, is that she's not the best player and she's not expected to be the best player. I think building around this guy was and maybe it wasn't a bad decision, like maybe it was the right read on the situation at the time, but looking back with that hindsight 2020 vision, building around Reese was a mistake this guy made, and part of the reason why they're 6-13, multiple years after that point, while, and obviously Caitlin Clark's different, but the Fever and the Caitlin Clark are making the playoffs and expected to be entering the season in championship mode. The Sky just aren't even close, and they moved on from Angel Reese. They're trying to reset. I'm sure they have a good vision and a good trajectory coming in the long term, but as for right now, it's not where it needs to be. I was going to write about Camila Cardoso because I felt like the Sky had a Cardoso problem in the sense that she fouls a lot. She's not a bad player at all, but she fouls a lot, and late in the game when they lose her, it's just over. If the game's close and she's in foul trouble, it's almost assuredly a Sky loss. And then she ended up having a great game. She had perfect shooting. She dropped 30. The Sky won a big game, and I'm glad I didn't write about it. Like I didn't have time. That's the reason why I didn't. I was looking to find a good time to fit that into the schedule, and I never quite could. And it was always an idea that I had. And the second she dropped 30 on 10 for 10 shooting for whatever it was like, okay, I'm not doing that for sure. But regardless, I feel like over the long term for the Sky, they're struggling with her, and they're struggling with the team across the board. I think it's this weird, awkward phase in between the Angel Reese era and whatever the next era is, and the Sky is still working to get to that point where they have a real direction. I really wanted to like this team. I really wanted to believe that they could really pull something together without Angel Reese. Obviously, that I think was probably beneficial for them in the long term, but I really felt like it could happen this year, and then just a couple losses in a row where I was watching on TV and I was just bewildered. The Liberty one was a rough one. That's when I really wanted to see this team succeed, and I was like, if they can knock off the Liberty, I'll believe, and I'll believe in the Sky, and I'll watch the Sky more, and I'll cheer for the Sky almost just because the underdog story is nice. And then the way that game ended, I was like, okay, I'm done. The Sky have. I'll watch them, but they've lost my allegiance. They've lost my interest in an emotional way. They're in pack it up territory for me. The Seattle Storm are in pack it up territory. They lost so much. They have a trajectory. They're in a good place. It's just not going to happen this season. They're 5-16. Pham and Malonga is a great combination in the front court that they can build around. Obviously, they have Johnson as well. They have a decent amount of quality, and they have something to build around. They have a direction. They have that core of those three players that I mentioned. But again, they just lost so much production from that playoff team, and it's not going to happen this year. It's a multiple year process. This is a true rebuild, a true complete overhaul rebuild for the Storm. And as a result, that success that we're looking for, the playoffs, the championship contendership, it's not going to happen. They're 5-16. Season's over in terms of championship aspirations for the Storm. I feel the same for the Sun, and I feel bad for Brittany Griner. She deserves better. It's a shame, even though I am, a Fever fan, and even though last year I watched every Fever game, I was really passionately rooting for them. Looking back, it's a shame that that's the way the season ended with the Dream, with Brittany Griner. And if they could play a different team in the first round, maybe win a series, maybe make a march to the WNBA Finals, which I didn't think was unthinkable, entering that playoffs, entering that postseason. It's just a shame that this is where Brittany Griner is now. She deserves better than 4-16. But the Sun is just, again, they're going to get out of Connecticut. They're going to move to Houston. Maybe that's an opportunity next year to really rebrand and really refresh, but it's not going to happen this year. And that's a shame, but for Brittany Griner at least. But the Sun are in a tricky place there. Those are my WNBA title tiers. I got 2 teams at the very top. I got 4 teams a step and a half behind, and then I've got a whole lot of teams in between. And then obviously the teams that I think are just, don't even, in terms of a championship, don't even think about it. In terms of the playoffs, don't even think about it. That's really what that pack it up category is for. Not going to play postseason basketball. Let's move on now and talk about Auburn football. This is a team that's been interesting to me. It's just a program that I've been thinking about. I can't stop. Sometimes and it happens with these big programs. like Auburn, a little bit historical. There's a little bit of nostalgia piece because their recent glory years involved, me kind of growing up, and obviously got the kick six in that time frame. You got some major appearances on national TV and standalone major games, SEC championships, etc. And they've been bad, right? Not necessarily bad, but by their standards, they've been bad. They've been struggling. 5-7 last year, they fire Hugh Freeze, and in comes Alex Golesh from South Florida, who went 9-4 at South Florida, but upset Florida, and had opportunities to really be the team that was in the playoff and really making some noise. It didn't quite happen. Had a very tough schedule, but some major upsets early for USF really made some noise. Alex Golesh was the face of that, and now he's at Auburn, and he brought with him not only enough production and enough talent from South Florida to make me think Auburn has a chance to actually kind of be something, not in the sense that they're going to go win a national championship or even contend for an SEC championship, but just in the sense that this is a step in the right direction immediately, and you can tell after year one. Not only does he bring over enough talent, he brings in the right talent in the right spots, because what Auburn has, the best parts of Auburn last year, the best elements of Auburn, are pairing with the best elements of USF that could possibly come over to kind of interplay with that. What I mean is, Auburn's offense is completely overhauled. There's only one expected starter that's returning from Auburn. The rest are transfers. They're not all from South Florida, but some of them are, including some of those key positions, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The defense, on the other hand, returns a lot. So you have a defense that was pretty good last year, pretty strong, pretty solid. And that defense is going to return a ton of production, at least return a ton of people familiar with the program, familiar with Auburn. That's going to happen. So the defense, I think, is going to be pretty consistent from last year. You also have the running game where you have Jeremiah Cobb, who's coming back from last year. He was the leading rusher. He's the one player on offense that's an expected starter that's going to come back. And then you bring in everyone that the USF players in that USF program has to offer. Right? You bring in Byron Brown, who's a tank of a quarterback, tank for two reasons. He's got a rocket arm, and he also just rumbles down the field mercilessly, and it takes multiple hits to bring him down time and time again. And so you bring in Byron Brown, and then you also bring in 4 of his top 5 receivers at South Florida. So you bring in all of them, and so you have that receiving room chemistry. You have that passing offense chemistry, where sometimes the issue is you bring in a quarterback and he doesn't know his receivers, and sometimes it takes some time. It's not going to happen here. As far as Byron Brown throwing the ball goes, for the most part, he has his not only a lot of receivers from South Florida, 4 out of his top 5, but also, because it's 4 out of the top 5, his favorite receivers and some of the best receivers. So the passing game will be fine. The running game was great last year, and that player returns. The defense was pretty solid last year, and that unit, for the most part, returns. And obviously, the supplement of the transfer portal, but a lot of that is coming back anyway. The one issue would be the offensive line, but the reason why I really even am talking about this is because I don't think it's that huge of a deal, considering what Brown can do with his legs, right? Again, he's a tank. He'll roll out of the pocket. He'll barrel through guys. He'll bulldoze through everybody. He's a tank. And that's what's going to happen in that case. So if the pocket's collapsing in situations like that, it's not going to be a doomsday scenario as it would be for maybe some other teams. And Byron Brown brings a lot of, a very specific skill set that I think specifically deals with that. So I like where he is, and I like where the team is. I like how the way the roster is constructed. And in year one, I think that maybe Alex Golesh and this Auburn team could put something together. Now, when I say put something together, I might mean 8 wins. I might mean less than that. I might mean 7 or 6. But if they do win a similar amount of games from last year, I think making a bowl game is the goal for sure. Obviously, I mean, we're talking about Auburn, but I think a bowl game is a realistic goal where you can be disappointed if this team goes 5-7. But last year, this team went 5-7, and this year, this team will go, let's say 6-6. And you might look at that, and from bird's eye view, you'll think to yourself, like, okay, Alex Golesh, year one, pretty much no change, pretty much a stagnant result from last year to this year. But if those wins and those losses come in the right ways and in the right situations, then I think we could be looking at a team that we're super impressed by the end of this whole thing. Where, right, like if they're close with, it's a really tough schedule. They play 3 playoff teams from last year on the road. That's Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss. And obviously those teams look different, but still, that's really difficult. If they're close, if they're within 2 possessions in all or most of those games, they don't get destroyed. And on the flip side, if the teams that they're, in theory supposed to beat in the non-conference schedule, even Baylor, right, who last year they beat 38-24, if they do something like that again, and if some of those lesser teams in the SEC on their schedule they're able to beat, and they win the close games, they win the 50-50s, and they go 6-6 or something like that, I think that's impressive, and I think that's a clear step in the right direction. And that's my prediction. I don't know that they'll go 6-6, but my prediction is that Alex Golesh, it'll be clear that hire was the right call, which is something Auburn needs. And I think that's all they need, right? I think that's all the Tigers need, because they've made some misses. You know, you go from Gus Malzahn to Brian Harsin to Hugh Freeze. There have been some misses recently for Auburn in terms of the head coaching position. And I think after the season, it'll be clear that Alex Golesh isn't another miss. I think it'll be clear that it's a step in the right direction, that at the very least he's taking Auburn in the positive direction and doing so in a significant and substantial way, which I think is going to be worth noting by the time we get to the end of the season. And it's because of the way the roster is constructed, right? You got the best elements of Auburn coming back, and you have the parts that aren't are supplemented and replaced with the USF, a lot of USF players, and a lot of just transfers across the board that I think they really could be something. I think they could make something of this team. We'll see how long this team's relevant. I think they beat Baylor. We'll see. We'll just see. We'll see when they run into a team that's just, they're potentially get destroyed or they lose significantly, and then all of a sudden, after a couple of weeks, they're out of the playoff race, and then a lot of people, they slip under the radar for a lot of people. But Auburn's going to be a team I'm just watching. I might not watch them on TV every single week if they're not relevant towards the end of the year, but I'm going to be aware of their scores. I'm going to be aware of what Auburn is doing. I'm interested by this team, and I'm interested to see if it works out in the way that I think it might. And maybe I'm completely underselling it, and maybe this team just has a way higher ceiling than I'm even thinking. But I think I'm on the money here, where I think they'll be between 6-6 and 8-4, and it'll be clear that this is a step in the right direction. And it'll be because you have a great quarterback with a great skill set that covers up some of the biggest weaknesses of the roster. You have the best elements of Auburn coming back. And the one question you could have about the quarterback receiver stuff isn't really an issue, because it's just his same receivers at USF. Not only that, but his very best receivers. That's what I have to say about Auburn. I think it'll be a step in the right direction, even if it's not obvious. And I want you to look out for that. If you're a college football fan, look out for Auburn. Are they, the best team? Are they the best team they can be? Are they better than last year? Over the course of the season, by the time we get to the end of the season, I think Auburn fans will look back and feel pleased with where things are headed. All right, that's all I have for today. I'm going to try to make this show weekly. I mentioned it earlier, but I think a weekly Andrew Garrison Show podcast would be great. Once football season starts and once basketball season starts and once those two sports are happening at the same time, considering that I cover IU football and IU men's basketball, that could be tricky. But I'm committed to really thoroughly attempting to make this show weekly for the indefinite future. So I appreciate you all for listening. I appreciate you all for watching. I appreciate Campbell Manahan for coming on. That was a lot of fun. Campbell's awesome. The World Cup is awesome. Auburn is, I'll say this, Alex Golesh is awesome, right? The Las Vegas Aces are awesome. Paige Beckers is awesome. And you're awesome for tuning in and watching or listening to this episode. I appreciate you a great deal. And my name is Andrew Garrison. I will see you all next time.